you can't lead if you don't even understand who you are.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
Leading from where you are, that means you can lead at all the different stages in your career. It has nothing to do with your authority or your title. I don't care if you're an intern, an assistant, coordinator, VP. If you are a working badass woman, that means you have the ability to lead from wherever you are. I have met and worked with executives who have been horrible leaders. It explains why my mother, before she retired, was a coach who helped executives become leaders. It's funny, when I was younger, I'm talking like pre-college days here, I always had it wrong. I didn't understand her job. I was like, what? It doesn't make any sense. I thought if you were an executive, well, that meant you already knew how to be a leader. And as I got older and wiser and had more experience under my belt, I realized how incredible my mother's role was within the company she's worked for. Hopefully, they paid her value times 10. So my friends, today we are going to talk about leading from where you are. Now, I want to have a little fun and change things up today. Nothing crazy, but I want this to be a little bit more interactive. If you like it, we do more of these type of episodes. If you don't like it, well, I don't really care. I'm just kidding. The only way I will know if you like it or not is if you send me a message. So when this episode is over, I ask you to send me a DM on Instagram, a message on LinkedIn, either one. You don't have to do both. That would be really crazy. Send me one or the other and let me know if it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I promise, if you don't want to make small talk, we don't have to make small talk. You can literally just give me an emoji and that will be the cue that you are just not in the mood for small talk. As an introvert, I understand that and I respect that. So thumbs up, thumbs down. You can find me on Instagram, send me a DM, or on LinkedIn and send me a message. And in the show notes, if you scroll down, you can find links to both of those, trying to make it super easy for you. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. Now, if you're driving, let me say that differently. If you're not driving, I want you to scroll down to the show notes. And the first link will be a workbook download leading from where you are. I want you to download that workbook. You can hit pause while you get it all ready. If you can, print it out. It's a scorecard, so you can assess how you measure up against the 9 skills of successful leaders. This list could have been longer. However, I had to narrow it down to 9, and I picked the 9 based off of my research and my experience in the industry over the past 20 years. Now, if you aren't in a place to download it, but you can take notes, you can still score yourself. Just jot down your score, which is a color, red, yellow, or green, real quick so we're all on the same page. Red means this skill is an opportunity for growth for me. Yellow means the skill is an area I have both strengths and opportunities for growth. Green, this skill is an area that I consider a strength. Okay, friends, let's jump in. As I go through this list at a high level, I want you to give yourself an honest and fair score. Okay, the first one is self-awareness. You can't lead if you don't understand who you are. I'm talking about knowing more than just your strengths and weaknesses. Studies show that great leaders have incredible self-awareness. You want to know what motivates you, what triggers you. For example, I'm really emotional. People never believe me when I tell them, which is their problem, not mine. But I manage it really well, except if I do not get enough sleep. And that happens a lot in the sports world, as you all know. I have walked out of meetings before because I didn't want to get emotional in front of people. I have avoided people before because I didn't want to have a difficult conversation because I knew it would end with me being in tears and them trying to console me. And that's not productive for anybody. But those situations, those reflected poorly on my leadership capabilities. As I became more self-aware, I was able to take different approaches. I didn't walk out of meetings anymore. I didn't avoid people. I rescheduled meetings where I knew we were going to go into this meeting and we were going to rumble. And I was honest. I said, I want to show up as my best self because we both deserve that. And today is not that day. I haven't slept because I was up all night with a sick kid. Okay, you guys, most of you know I don't have children, but I was honest and I said, I was up all night with a sick dog, who I call a kid. But that's a true story. So we pushed the meeting to the next day and man, I was 100% on my game. And when things got rocky, like I knew they would, I was able to control my emotions and hold a difficult but rich discussion with the person I was meeting with. So when it comes to self-awareness, how would you rate yourself? I have a lot of colleagues that have taken assessments over the years and swear by them. I do too. There's a lot of them. My personal favorite is Enneagram. I'm a 2 for any fellow Enneagrammers out there. Man, I'm not going to lie. For Enneagram, it was hard to read. It was like I was reading a book about myself. It was 100% accurate. Why it was difficult is they talk about the good and when you're at your best, but they also talk about when you're at your worst. And clearly, the worst part was hard to swallow for me. I will link in the show notes to a list of assessments that you can take. Some are free, some have small fees. None of them are linked to me. So this is just feedback that I've received from others, colleagues, and other consultants as well. So I thought I'd share those with you. Okay, so make sure you give yourself a red, yellow, or green for self-aware. Okay, I'm going to move through these a little quicker because y'all aren't going to stick around if this is a 90-minute episode. So we're going to talk about these at a high level. Number 2, consistently chooses courage over comfort. In order to step outside of your comfort zone, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It can be speaking truth to power, giving difficult feedback, standing up for a colleague. I mean, the list goes on. The key here is to be consistent. So I want to ask you, are you practicing this daily? Tell me, how would you rate yourself when it comes to choosing courage over comfort? Number 3, speaking truth to power, raising your hand and speaking up when nobody else in the room is. You see, as a leader, you can't opt out of conversations because you are afraid of getting things wrong. This happens so often. I've had a lot of clients admit to me that they just sort of opted out of the conversation because they didn't know if they were going to be able to get it right. Is this something you do? Or are you agreeing? Do you opt into all the conversations and raise your hand and you're at the table every day? Go ahead, rate yourself for how you see yourself when it comes to speaking truth to power. Okay, number 4 on the list of skills of successful leaders. Number 4 is sets and holds boundaries. First, you have to identify your boundaries. What do you want them to be? What's important to you? What helps you do your best work? Once you set them, then comes the hard work. It's holding them. It's protecting your boundaries, not feeling bad when you have to enforce them. Let me say that different. You can feel, some of us, I do feel bad when I have to enforce them, but I do it anyway. So it's okay to feel bad, but do you enforce them? And remember, go easy on yourself when you do feel bad. You're not a bad person. It's okay. It's hard to tell people no sometimes. It's hard to make sure you protect those boundaries and say no to people, but go be kind to yourself. If you are trying to set boundaries and you feel lost, think about what allows you to do your best work. What does your ideal work week look like? What does your ideal work month look like? What does balance, or maybe there's no such thing as balance in your life, so maybe it's harmony. What does balance or harmony look like for you? So how would you rate yourself for set and hold boundaries? I'll give you a quick example. I promise this episode wasn't going to be 90 minutes. I have a client who has 3 children, and she wanted to set some boundaries when it came to answering emails after work hours. And so she had started to tell herself a story about what that was going to look like and how her boss was going to be disappointed, how she was letting down the company, her colleagues. And I get it, right? We've all been there. And so she did not want to have that conversation. However, she was struggling. She had this conflict because she knew it was what she needed to do. So when she finally did it, her boss was like, absolutely. If I email you, ignore me. Let's set a time after 5:30. Perfect. If you don't answer me the next day, I know it's okay. Like it is not expected that you answer me. So she said it. She had a great conversation. Even though she was afraid to have it, she felt the fear and did it anyway. And then the hardest part for her, we talked like a month later, was she was not holding her own boundary. And she was disappointed in herself, and she knew she had to go back and work on it again. So she had some guilt. She felt bad. So she was still answering emails from time to time. Then she worked on it, and it took some practice. So again, go easy on yourself. How would you rate yourself on number 4, sets and hold boundaries? Number 5, takes ownership of mistakes and failures. Ooh, this was a hard one for me. I always equated mistakes and failures with my career being over, like a total doomsday scenario. Literally, it never happened. I thought that leaders never made mistakes. When you don't have a seat at the table with them, and you're not in the same rooms as them and you see them from afar, it's not like they're skipping down the hallway being like, I made a mistake. Guess what? Like, I fucked up. No, that's not how it works. You don't hear about these things, right? You only hear about these successes because usually they're in the media or there's some internal memo that you get, but you don't hear about, there's no memo on internal failures. Maybe there should be. We'll talk more of that later. So leaders do make mistakes. What they do is they own them and they identify the key learnings. So tell me, how are you doing with this skill? How would you rate yourself when it comes to taking ownership of mistakes and failures that you have made? No pointing fingers. How are you taking it and just saying, this is me. I did this, and this is what I learned from that. And that's what the failure memo should look like every couple of months. Here's what we all tried. You don't have to put names to it. Maybe you do. You can say executive, whatever. And then you can say, here's mistakes that we made. Here's the key learnings. I think that would help people. Interesting. Someone tries that, let me know. All right. Number 6, active listener. People struggle because they are always listening to respond, not to understand, right? So people who aren't active listeners, their struggle is in that area. They are, I hear you, but I already have a response. So I don't even know what else you're saying right now, because the first things that came out of your mouth, I know what I'm going to say to it. Happens a lot. Now, I've been on that side too. However, I learned quickly, active listeners earn so much more trust among your colleagues or your clients, whoever you're talking to. A tip on how to do this, repeat back what you hear. I use it all the time with consulting and coaching. One time I used it in a client. I pride myself. I'm really good at it. And I said it, I did the whole, repeat it back. And I said, okay, so what I hear you saying is, and I just, rattled it off. And she said, no, that's not what I said at all. Okay. I had to take a deep breath because it is exactly what she said, but it's not what she meant. Right. And so I was like, oh, let's hit the reset button. Let's do this over. And we went over it again, repeated it back. Got it. All right. I have a complete understanding of what you just said, what point you're trying to get across. So again, you achieve trust when you were able to be an active listener, because you also learn and you also understand another person's point of view. So when it comes to being an active listener, how would you rate yourself? Number 7 on the list of skills of successful leaders, lives into their values and practices integrity. When it comes to values and practicing integrity, I like to point to Brené Brown's work to really bring it to life. In her book, Dare to Lead, which is a great book, I highly recommend it. Brené says, daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things. She also talks about integrity as choosing what's right over what's fast, fun, and easy. I will link to Brené Brown's list of values in the show notes. They will help you do your best work. I will also link to the Game of Her Own episode with Chief Marketing Officer for the Atlanta Hawks, Melissa Proctor. Melissa talks about how she lives into her principles every single day throughout her incredible career. She also goes into great detail about her principles in her book, From Ball Girl to CMO. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. How would you score yourself on living into your values and practicing integrity? Number 8, active learner. This is a big one. Whenever I'm reading an article featuring a leader in the sports and entertainment industry, they always reference being an active learner. Leaders on the podcast also do the same. They talk about being curious, always learning and growing and strengthening their skills. And the big one, I love this one. They always talk about how they know that they don't have all of the answers. So when it comes to being an active learner, how would you rate yourself? We're moving on to the last one on the list of skills of successful leaders. Number 9, sets clear goals. Last but not least, the skills of a successful leader are identifying your goals and consistently tracking your progress. So it's one thing to set your goals, but are you tracking them every week? Are you tracking them at least monthly? Are you going back at the very least quarterly just to check in to see how you're doing? When I work with my clients, I give them a 12-month scorecard. Go with this red, yellow, and green theme, if you will. And we talk about how they're doing, what's working, what's not. I recommend you doing the same thing. So how would you rate yourself when it comes to setting clear goals? All right, my friends. So if you have downloaded the workbook, you will see on the first page, you gave yourself the assessment. You circled red, yellow, or green for each of the 9 skills of successful leaders. On page 2, this is the work that I did with my clients. I recommend that you pick 3 of the skills from the sheet, right? Maybe if there's just 3 reds, maybe you pick those. Right? Pick which ones really that are important to you, that you know that you need to work on. Pick those. Now, the reason I say don't pick all 9, say you gave yourself all red and yellows, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna get these all to green. I love that attitude. I recommend doing it in phases because it's a lot of work. You have to be intentional. You have to work on yourself as you grow. So I would recommend picking 2 to 3 of these skills and scrolling down to page 2 or turning to page 2 and dive in. So this is the work I do with my clients. They fill out this worksheet and then we talk about it in a group setting. We do breakout rooms and then we talk about what the solutions can be to get over those obstacles, to get over the things that get in your way of these skills. So I recommend for you to do this on your own. I'm so happy that I'm able to share this workbook with you. I hope you find it helpful. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know. Give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down if you're not in the mood for small talk. I get it. Introvert, I understand. 2, if you want to tell me more, let me know. Let me know which ones you picked. Let me know why you picked them and maybe what's getting in your way. We can have a little chit chat. So would love to hear from you. That is all for now, my friends. I will talk to you next week.